Well, I think we can begin the session. I am super excited today because this is our 8th virtual FinTech series, and we see a lot of familiar names here today. And I want to thank you guys for being our loyal customer base for the series for the past 2 years. But this one's a little bit different because it's powered by KFH Bahrain, which I'm very happy to have on board. It's one of the leading Islamic banks in Bahrain and an integral contributor to Bahrain's Islamic financial sector. And we have a lot of awesome topics lined up until the end of the year, December. So please stay tuned on all our social channels. So today's topic is a very important topic, and it's a topic that will always remain crucial and integral within the fintech landscape, especially in MENA, since we do have the lowest rates compared to other regions. And the UAE is leading on this front. And I think Bahrain can come second to that based on what I've seen from a lot of the initiatives that we've been doing. So, in celebration of Financial Literacy Month, which is in April, but we're celebrating the end of it, we're going to be talking about financial inclusion, the way forward, and some of the discussion points that we want to highlight today with our awesome speakers is how to accelerate financial inclusion, which has already been accelerated by the pandemic in several ways. How is Bahrain FinTech Bay also accelerating that on their own with their, and they've also launched their financial inclusion report in 2020. And some of the metrics might have slightly changed, but most of the information and stats that will be shared by them today will be very important. And the way forward for fintechs and banks. So we have 4 speakers today. We have Zeeba Askar, head of the Banking and Finance Center at BIBF and a board member at the Bahrain Association of Banks. Suzy, the Chief Partnerships Officer of Bahrain FinTech Bay. We also have Mahmood, Executive Manager and Head of Corporate and SME Banking at Kuwait Finance House, and Ahmed AlMahri, Senior Manager at Business Services at Benefit Bahrain. So I want to thank you all for being here. And without further ado, I'm going to begin with the questions. We're going to have a panel discussion and then a Q&A session at the end. So if you have any questions, please feel free to write them on the chat, and then Alex, my colleague, will address them at the end. So my first question is also a favorite. And it's a little bit of, I think this is the toughest question versus the other ones because everyone will have their own perspective. So I will start with Zeeba to answer this question first. What does financial inclusion mean to you? And you have to think about it from your perspective and role. And how do you define that as an organization, whether it's from BIBF or Bahrain Association of Banks?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me for this event. It's actually a very interesting topic and very timely to speak about financial inclusion because it blends in very well with many different aspects, which hopefully we'll be discussing later. So financial inclusion, as the name implies, it's about who's included in the financial service industry. And I would think about who is excluded then. So the people who are excluded, or the categories that are excluded, will be the what we refer to as the unbanked, or that they are the underbanked sector. And those market segments that are not financially included in the whole system, they actually have a couple of barriers. So they have barriers, whether it's related to the access, to the transaction cost. They could have behavioral biases on the way they have been raised on how to save money, where to put their money, and how to actually invest their money. And what is relevant as far as BIBF is concerned is the financial literacy. So to have a financially inclusive market, financial literacy is a very, very important aspect, because the more you start to create these awarenesses and make people understand what are the financial aspects, the importance to be in the system, the more you are going to have them included and be part of it. And in this regard, BIBF, in collaboration with Bahrain Bourse, we actually have a regular investment and savings seminar that the whole purpose of it is to disseminate financial literacy, make people understand what is the different saving schemes, investment schemes, and it is open for public and it is for free. So this is as far as what it means to our to BIBF. And another aspect I just want to add on this is if we want to think about the impact of the financial inclusion on the whole economic system. So according to the World Bank, around 2.5 billion people are still excluded from having access to financial services. and around 200 million of different micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, they do not have access to such credit lines, for example, or different banking products. So just tapping into that market, it's a huge opportunity economically. And I believe with the esteemed speakers that we have today, each one is playing a different role in bringing a holistic solution to actually achieve more financially inclusive economy.
Thank you so much, Zeeba. I'm glad that you brought up that statistic. It was a statistic that I had actually written down. And it is quite an alarming number. And I'll move to Suzy. Suzy, Bahrain FinTech Bay is the largest fintech hub in the MENA region, and you guys have been doing a lot of publications and research reports, and you're doing a lot of initiatives, especially when it comes to financial inclusion. Can you share what financial inclusion means to you and to Bahrain FinTech Bay in terms of what they're doing?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me on this panel. It's great to be amongst all these great people with, and it's very interesting perspectives from everything. With Zeeba, what she's saying, I think she gave a very good definition. To elaborate on that is actually, it should sound on what underbanked and unbanked are. Our role as Bahrain FinTech Bay, we're basically a fintech ecosystem player. So our role is to support our partners and the key players within the financial services industry to really take a look at global developments that boost customer experience and have a double look at what they are currently offering. So by us sharing emerging technologies within a particular space, and by introducing our partners to true and tested fintech companies, which is what we do, we hope to support the financial institutions to rethink their products into versions that would really encourage individuals and startups to explore the many ways of how they can benefit from existing financial products. At the end of the day, for me and for our organization, financial inclusion to us is bringing the best practices to fill in the gaps and satisfy the end user. Financial inclusion basically is identified as a fundamental driver of a nation's economic and social development. And it has become, as Zeeba mentioned, increasingly more important for individuals to be able to fully participate in the financial ecosystem of an economy and be also able to utilize accessible and quality financial services. So from our side, that is, fintech has the potential of enabling financial inclusion by maximizing the use of technology to increase the access, which is one word that you'll probably hear a lot during this discussion, of innovation in financial services. So basically, we'll also create equality, customer reach, increase transparency and efficiency within the society. So from our side, that's my personal and also our view. I'm happy to give some more statistics. Just to go with what Zeeba said, over 2 billion people are unbanked worldwide, and in MENA, 301 million of them are there. So we have 301 million of that market. In terms of mobile penetration, which I'm sure we'll go into as well, we're about 66% mobile penetration worldwide and 70% in MENA. Same with digital payments. We have about 50%, globally and 38% in MENA. These are findings from the report. So from my role as well, I can share with you along the way and in the other questions, more findings about what we came to in the 2020 report. But for now, that's my answer to the first question. Thank you, Fatima.
Thank you so much, Suzy. That's a good answer. I mean, partnerships is very crucial as well because financial inclusion is very broad. It's very multi-layered. So we have a lot of different actors in the ecosystem, and everyone kind of has to come together to kind of provide a holistic solution at the end of the day. I'm going to move to Mahmood from KFH. What does financial inclusion mean to you as being one of the leading Islamic banks in the center? And I know that you guys do a lot on the SME and retail front, but for now, let's stick to the definition.
Sure. Thank you, first of all, for this fruitful event and for inviting the guest speakers and inviting us to this discussion. To start with, financial inclusion is a big term, and and to simplify it is basically to provide financial services and products to individuals and businesses to give them access to it at a very affordable price and at a very good level of service and increase the effectiveness and efficiency of that service. So basically provide each and every individual with the service so that to address their needs, their financial needs and aspects, and that would lead to an improved way of life.
Thank you so much, Mahmood. I think the three main terms that we've heard along is access, understanding, effective and efficiencies, and obviously for developed and underdeveloped, that meaning can be very different to both markets. Ahmed AlMahri from Benefit. We've had you as a speaker several times, Ahmed, and I love the insights that you've shared throughout the years. And Benefit is close to my heart as well for all the initiatives that you've been doing. What does financial inclusion mean to Benefit? You guys had quite a good run in the last couple of months.
Thank you, Fatma, and thank you to the guest speakers and for having me today. I'm going away from the literature, if I may say.
Okay.
And from our perspective, it's wherever there is a mean that cash is being used as a mean of exchange, we consider it outside the financial inclusion and needs to be included within the financial ecosystem. So our goals and our aims is also always to address those areas or pain points that are today having cash as a mean of exchange, as the main mean of exchange, I would say. So we are working with partners, we are working with banks and collaborating with different entities within the country in order to accommodate and provide solutions that really addresses this need. And you've seen during the pandemic, cash was really a concern to people. So we have been working so hard with a lot of participants within the market to address those areas where cash were still dominant, to be honest. So from our perspective is where we can digitalize the way of exchange of financial transaction toward that, and that will encourage by itself financial inclusion. So if any customer used to use cash as a mean, if there is more convenient, more easy, more reliable way of transacting, of course, they will change toward that. And we have seen this, I believe, going and saying this more domestic example, if I would say. Jam'iyya, for example, we used to exchange it by cash. Everyone at home used to exchange in cash. With the introduction of Benefit Bay, you don't see this anymore. So here we're providing a mean to really transform such toward electronic and toward encouraging even unbanked people to be within the banking sector. And we have seen a lot of adaptation in terms of electronic services with the introduction of the new, inshallah, now the WBS project, wage protection scheme, in collaboration with the AlMahri and Labor Fund. That will also contribute a lot in including a lot of the sector today unbanked or underbanked, I would say, in the banking sector with the collaboration of PSBs and banks within the country.
Thank you so much, Ahmed. I think you brought on a good point with cash, especially. People will always be comfortable with cash no matter where you go. And I think the tough job is changing the mindset. And this is where efficiency and effectiveness comes in. Because we have a lot of misleading practices or not a good understand, people don't have a good understanding of how easy these services can be and where it can lead them to actually, go from cash to using digital services is, I think, the trickiest part of the whole of the financial inclusion journey. So thank you for those points. I'm going to start with Zeeba's first question. From your specific role at the BIBF, because you're the head of the Business and Finance Center, which offers a lot of insights needed to navigate the world of, especially where the backbone of finance is changing right now. You guys have a very tough role, especially when it comes to educational perspective of it. How do educational entities such as the BIBF or others within the same sector engage students and educators to expand that conversation on financial inclusion and also allow them to share these resources?
Yes, actually, we do have a tough role to play because especially when it comes to educators, you have a wide range, I would say, of stakeholders that you need to address. So BIBF actually is in a unique position because it is governed by the Central Bank of Bahrain, and the majority of the client is actually financial institutions. But in addition to financial institutions, we do provide services for non-finance sectors. So whether it's industrial, governmental, family businesses. So we kind of have a reach out to almost, I guess, everybody in the economy. And the role that BIBF plays is that it continuously caters to different ranges of stakeholders. So for example, we are addressing the financial literacy programs, whether being it from the youth through, for example, the Injaz program, and even when the COVID happened, we collaborated with the Ministry of Labor and we offered a free training program for job seekers. Then BBK actually launched a program back last year, late last year, and that was delivered by BIBF. And the objective of it was actually to train women staying at home, Bahraini women staying at home, on digital literacy. So I believe that BIBF plays the role of an enabler, because once you provide this kind of knowledge, this kind of literacy, you actually give people who otherwise wouldn't have the tools to be able to know how to connect, especially when I'm thinking about the digital disruption that has taken place. Banking as normal is not there anymore. So many people, even those who are financially included in the traditional system, they might have felt excluded in the digital system. They didn't know maybe how to use it. And I would also address the banks as well, the financial sector, because many financial institutions, especially when the COVID happened, might not have been well prepared to have the majority of their products and services going online. So BIBF actually has a whole digital transformation center that is creating a lot of awareness programs and actually training programs for the financial institutions on how to go digital and have virtual banking coming in place. So there are a lot of programs that has been offered by BIBF. Also, I would like to mention about even supporting the SMEs. So we have signed an agreement with the tender board to even support the SMEs on how to apply for tender application. So this is another way that we are playing a role to enable these SMEs to know how to actually apply for these kind of bids and tenders, and therefore be included in the economic growth. So I believe that BIBF continuously looks at what is the kind of the trend that is happening in the economy and what are the skill gaps required, that is addressing a wide variety of I would say, participants in the market.
Thank you so much, Zeeba. You made a good point, as in, because it's education, it can be very broad, it can be very vague as well. And you're right when you said the financial institutions may have had financial literacy based programs, and that was the vision, that was the aim. But because things accelerated too fast, the transition of making them and their consumers understand those programs, I think that there was a lag a little bit there in the meantime. So you did bring up a good point. Suzy, I want to go to you, and I want to ask you the question when it comes to the financial inclusion in Bahrain, because you did a study just on that. A positive outlook for financial inclusion is obviously the availability of financial literacy, thematic programs, targeting a lot of diverse groups when it comes to economic education, investment, entrepreneurship. So what are some of the programs of Bahrain FinTech Bay? I know I've been a part of them, and you guys have one coming up as well, that accelerate financial inclusion awareness in Bahrain.
Thank you so much, Fada. Yeah, that's a great question. I want to also pick up, education. I think the reason why we actually decided to go ahead with the report and basically research all of this is because one of the first things that you want to look at is creating awareness. And this report, that's one of our main things, was to create awareness, to make people understand what is actually going on in the area. I mean, from Bahrain FinTech Bay, there are numerous programs we won. One of them is actually, which we began in COVID, was our acceleration programs. And one actually started just before COVID, which was the benefit actually one that we have, and I'll go into in a bit. But it started off that way. And acceleration programs, usually they bring to light the gaps within the market that excludes a segment of the population from certain services. So if we look at the ones, the one that benefited, the sustainability program, I know Fatima, you also helped on that program. It helped the youth, and in general, all our accelerations programs, they help the youth to sort of target social and economic challenges. In that case, the SDGs, and our recent programs like Standard Chartered and MEPI also do that. They really help empower individuals to take a look at all the challenges that we have, whether it's financial, but that's during COVID and in general during our times. So I think for our side, it's creating awareness, also encouraging the youth to think of the problems that we have, things of the gaps we need to bridge, and sort of come up with practical ideas. And through that's one part of it. The second part of it is our research and publications like this report that looks into all kinds of hot topics, even open banking, for example. And again, it goes back to creating awareness against the general population. I always mention across the report again and again that awareness is the key tool to having, you know, inclusion of people within the financial services sector. We run workshops, we run certain other events. We also provide during these programs and on the side mentorship. And that is probably one of the key things we deliver. I know we have the Georgetown FinTech program that we're running shortly. That's more geared to getting people more to understand, because one of the things that we'll go into maybe in the next question is that to understand what services there are out there and how it works, you know, because that's one of the key things that we, in the findings in the report that I'll speak about later, is what we found in the market to being one of the factors that don't exactly help, you know, facilitate it. So yeah, from our side, that's, I hope answers your question.
No, it does. I think what Bahrain FinTech Bay does that a lot that other entities, let's just say organization, can't do because they're busy doing other initiatives when it comes to banking. They have specific rules. But with Bahrain FinTech Bay, I think you guys have the power, let's just say, to help all the other financial players and partners that you've mentioned to execute these programs in partnership with MENA's largest hub, which is, like you said, partnerships is key. And through partnerships, awareness can become much bigger than it is. Because if I, as in one entity, do solo awareness from my end, I don't think the impact can be a bit bigger when everyone has different resources to share.
Absolutely.
Mahmood, the question for you is more geared towards what KFH is really doing, because I know that you guys do a lot on the SME and the retail front, and I think the retail front a little bit more. So yet we have difficulty securing, we have a lot. So let's just say accounting, SMEs are a major driver of economic growth and job creation, but we still see that they have difficulty in accessing financing, limiting their ability to grow and thrive. And financial inclusion, you know, refers to universal accessibility. So as Kuwait Finance House, you guys have a lot of financial products, whether it's retail, whether it's SME focused, that is catered to that. Can you share some of those, and why do you think these services help accelerate financial inclusion and literacy?
Sure, thank you for the question. Just before answering the question directly, I just want to shed light that on financial inclusion as a topic is a very important topic for any developed nation. In order for a nation to increase its economic growth and its economic potential, we need to promote more financial inclusion. And one clear way of promoting financial inclusion and having more people and more businesses use the financial services is through the digitization services and products and the platforms. So digitization plays a very important role in including more people and providing the services at a very convenient, I must say, and low price level, and at the same time in a very effective manner for those entities and institutions that basically transact in the market. And this by itself promotes more economic growth. Now, Bahrain as a government has played a very fundamental role over the previous years and have developed the IT infrastructure and the telecommunication sector. The improvement and development of the telecommunication sector is vital for the digitization process to flourish. And so the ground has been well set in terms of infrastructure and telecommunication, and all of the required stakeholders have been hosted in Bahrain. And today we have organizations such as the FinTech Bay, and we have the BIFB doing the training. We have Benefit, they control the payment gateway and provide the innovative services. And we also do have the central bank coming with the sandbox and promoting innovation and creativity in this field. So the infrastructure is out there, it's set, and this is something that has been identified as a country, that this is something that we need to develop in order to continue growing our economy. And based on all of this, Kuwait Finance House had identified digitization as a prime strategic direction. And we have invested in this field before the pandemic, actually, and we started with the introduction of the Jazeel application. And it is one of the first applications that came out to the market. And basically, what it allows you is that it allows you to open a bank account literally in 3 to 4 minutes or 5 minutes. A simple process of opening a bank account used to take 30 to 40 minutes with a physical interface, walking into a branch, signing maybe 12 different documents, have all been transformed into a very convenient, modernized way of through your mobile device, a process that would only take 2 to 3 minutes, as I said, and it virtually costs nothing to the client, and this is all client centric. In order to promote also inclusion, we need to avail those services at a very low fees for the client. And in order to do that, we need to ensure that it does not cost us as much to do it. And hence, we have invested in upgrading our systems and the new technology. And we have sent our resources to the various programs led by BIBF locally that are hosted with the cooperation with the FinTech Bay, and also internationally, we've been participating in the Singapore FinTech Festival on an annual basis, and this is something in order to be able to discover the latest developments in this field and try to bring the latest to our country, because this would actually promote and foster inclusion. And just to give me just some statistics on Jazeel, historically, I mean, this was launched basically in May 2018. So this was like a year before the pandemic, which the pandemic only increased that and fueled that. When the pandemic hit, we were ready for that. And again, a lot of praise goes to the stakeholders, including the central bank and the other institutions that worked hand in hand to develop to deliver the service. Today we have more than 37,000 client accounts, with more than 53,000 bank accounts that are active. Out of our current portfolio of clients, individuals and businesses, 40% of them use today the digital services. Now, what's interesting here in the statistics is looking at the newcomers, the new clients. 86% of the new bank accounts are all opened through the digital platform. Shows you that the client behavior has changed significantly compared to the earlier years. Modernization is playing its effect here, and we need to cope up with it and be at the cutting edge. And the client wants the service now, wants this today, and wants the cheapest and the most effective and efficient service. So we've been focusing on enhancing the customer journey. We started by the basic product. So today you can open a bank account virtually within a few minutes, and you can do your basic money transfers. You can open see your savings account, so you can tap into your savings account and decide for that. You can pay your fawatir bills through that terminal as well. We've also went a step forward, and today any GCC national that intends to open a bank account in Bahrain can do this remotely from his country. So you can see that we're really focusing on any economic activity that deals with the financial sector that has to do with Bahrain. We're focusing on that. Expats, a lot of the companies and corporates, they have their employees, and instead of having the archaic way of payroll service, for example, today you can do it in a very modernized way. There is less error in this process, and there is more control, and it is done with a high level of precision. So this all enhances the customer journey. It even improves the controls. So even from AML perspective and from regulatory requirements, it provides a more secure way of dealing. Obviously, people would question, the security side of it and the cyber security, but these things are taken very seriously in Bahrain, and this goes back to the Central Bank of Bahrain, and they always ensure that there is no compromise on the security front, and we run through a lot of checks and balances and actual assessment before actually launching those products. And it's a process. It is a continuous process. It requires agility. It requires adaptation and openness, and being open to any new idea. This actually helped us in launching the Jazeera platform. It was very successful. We won a lot of prizes in 2020 as a bank. KFH was named as the best digital banking application in the Middle East and in Bahrain. And we also got the best digital Islamic banking platform as well. This
Thank
was
you so much, Mahmood. I mean, I'm gonna let you kind of expand more on the third question when it comes to you, especially when it comes to the initiatives that banks and institutions have to do to advance. And
Sure.
Jazeera, I've seen Jazeera's successful journey throughout the year as well. Even before the pandemic, we've been involved initially as well, and hearing all the conversations that have been happening. Community banking, digitization, quite important as well. And I think we have a few questions in regards to that, which we'll address after the session. And I also want to go to Ahmed's second question. Benefit has a very strategic way of partnering with the right institutions, and also and I think you guys also have a very let's just say positive aspect of which sectors to focus on to drive financial inclusion. So partnerships with other major entities, we said, is crucial for accelerating financial inclusion. So by working together, we can have more financial solutions in other sectors. So what are some of the examples of these partnerships that you have done, and why do you think they're important?
Actually, the mindset and benefit is all focused about partnership, because to be honest, there is no single entity that can do everything. And there are a lot of successful stories that we have with the financial sector and in the government, and especially for the contribution for the financial inclusion, we have the AKYC as one of the leading, I would say, implementation in the region. If I may call it, maybe one of the first to ever happen. This was ثمرة نجاح of collaboration with the government, which we have built a very successful model, allowing financial institutions to enable online onboarding and fetching correct information without dependency on any documentation or photos or being scanned, because you'll get the source of the customer KYC from an authentic and trusted organization or the government itself, which are the custodian of those information. So this helps really improve the financial digital transformation for banks and financial institutions, and to availing a digital onboarding services. We have also other success stories. And as I said earlier in the introduction question, cash is an enemy to us. So we have also collaborated with a number of banks and BSPs toward tapping into the small untapped merchant to avail an electronic mean of payment at that merchant. And we have a lot of success story with Pi and Credimax and other banks as well, toward availing the QR of Benefit Pay and some of those small shops, groceries. A lot of them you've seen across the street that used to only deal with cash. Now they are accepting electronic payment, and it is increasing as we speak. So this is one way of translating a successful partnership. We have the technology, the mean, and they are the driver toward the adaptation to it, because they have the reach, they have been in this business, and they are dealing with those entities for a long time. So they are the drivers for us for the inclusion of those untapped sector in the financial transaction world. And we can go on and on, but again, and we have the cooperation as well with FinTech Bay as well, and toward accepting fintechs. Benefit is a shared platform. So we are here acting as an enabler for any participant in the market. We have the infrastructure, and all the components that they can use toward innovating their services further on without worrying on connectivity, speed, payment processing, and all of that being taken care of Benefit, and they can excel in providing a user journey that is really convenient and easy and addressing the market requirement.
Thank you so much, Ahmed. I like that you called your partners drivers, because they are drivers of change, altogether.
Yes.
And the shared as and benefit being termed and using the term shared platform is really the way that we're supposed to be looking at it. That's the outlook that I feel every company and entity should be having, especially during crucial and turbulent times such as this. I'm gonna go back to Zeeba, for your last question, I want to tap into your extensive experience in the banking sector because you wear many hats, Zeeba, and I think it's a question that should be going towards you as well. So we have learned that banks should look for certain markets when it comes to prioritizing their investments in financial inclusion, especially in specific areas. So what should be the first step so that financial institutions and entities like the BIBF or any other entity for that matter can play a bigger role in this area?
I think it's actually a very good question because it's summarizing a very kind of a number of issues all together. So I would say that the first step is for the financial institutions to really look inwards, to look at what they are offering, what services are being offered. So traditionally, financial institutions, and even when I was back in the university days, it's always that the main purpose of institution is shareholder and profit maximization. So it's a very shareholder kind of centric mindset. But I believe that especially with the COVID, the existence of companies is more towards being a stakeholder centric rather than just focusing on a shareholder. So in 2020, when the pandemic came on board, many of the institutions were given kind of an ultimatum that if your services, if your products are, first of all, not accessible and they are not serving a need or something that is important or of a value, then your institution is going to struggle because there will not be demand and people will not have access. And this is what pushed many institutions, not only on the financial sector, but even on the retail, that they started to figuring out how they can go digital, how can they make access easier. And this also fits in very well when we are looking around and we see the concept of sustainable development and the ESGs, environmental, social, and governance. So the factor that got highlighted significantly in 2020 is really the social aspect. And the social aspect is where we are looking at the financial inclusion and how catering to the need of the wider society and community that we are serving is actually complementary to it's actually even a necessity for the business to continue. So if I'm looking in terms of priorities and what institutions should look at, so first of all, as I said, it's to look inwards, because when you look at your own business practices and what products and offerings you are serving, you will be able to identify where is the gap, what opportunities more you can kind of serve. So we did mention some statistics earlier, but then, how are those statistics relevant to you that you can actually transform them to business opportunities? So for example, I would say that when we talk about financial inclusion, what are we looking at? So we are looking at payment mechanism, which Ahmed has mentioned earlier, especially benefit is addressing the paradigm shift from a cash-based community or economy to more of a digital based community and economy. So this is one of the areas that banks can focus on. The second is the saving products, the loan, the microfinance products. What are they offering? The products themselves are not complicated, but when we're looking at financial inclusion, we need to this is where we need to implement design thinking, actually innovation, because when you design the product in such a way that it actually fits the need. So you could have microfinance facilities, but if your microfinance terms is not aligned with the cash flow of the entity you are trying to support, it will be of minimal value for that entity. If, for example, you have these small businesses looking for loans, but you have your typical checklist of my collaterals and this is what I need, you're not really giving a product that is usable for those entities. So looking at, internally at what is my product offering, whether I can redesign them in such a way that I protect myself. Of course, banks, they have their fiduciary duties and their regulatory requirements. You protect yourself from a risk perspective, but in the same time, how can you meet in the middle with those sectors that are underserved? So this would be my suggestion.
Thank you so much, Zeeba. I think if I can sum up some of the awesome points that you shared, to, first of all, think what niche or what is the niche or the market that you're addressing, um, looking inwards and having more of a stakeholder perspective rather than a shareholder perspective. What's the necessity for your business products, and also what do they actually fit a need, and how can you design them in a way where it hits kind of the consumer's needs and emotional intelligence, design thinking. So all of that is, I think, are really good points as our first few steps when you start the financial inclusion journey for any entity. Suzy, my last question to you. I want to kind of go back to the reports. I think it has a lot of good key factors and stats. So it highlights a lot of the key factors that enables financial inclusion, some of which include increasing organic growth, inorganic growth, and also usage of mandatory transactions, improving the quality and range of financial services. I can go on and on. Or, for example, having minimum barriers to opening a bank account. Those are just some examples. But there are a set of indicators that are mentioned in the report that help us measure financial inclusion, because measurement is very important. Can you mention some of those indicators with us?
Absolutely. So like you mentioned, there are actually several indicators for financial inclusion, but in the report, we chose to narrow it down to the four main indicators. So the word again comes again, access to financial service, access to credit and savings and digital payments, right? The reason for choosing these indicators because of the measurement between access versus usage. I'm going to say this a few times, and I noticed there were some questions coming up, so I'm going to tie in some of the people asking about Bahrain and why is this the case. So when you talk about access versus usage, while having like a bank account shows us like we have access to a bank account, and I'm talking about everybody, like we're talking about again the financial inclusion, the underbanked and so on, but it can be really easily misleading as an indicator alone, because access to things is not enough. You need to know whether people are actually using the account and using these things. And then this is how this is measured by activities like savings, credits, digital payments, as Ahmed was saying as well. So basically, when you talk about access and usage, many people have accounts, but out of 5 accounts, 2 out of them are inactive. Even, it goes across the board with many things. So financial inclusion in the report, this is what we came up, isn't really achieved until people make use of them, okay? And so when we did this study, we sort of looked at like, what is the case? What's holding them back? What's going on? And we found out like in the Middle East or in general, a lot of this is back behind that, people like for emotional and cultural beliefs. People in MENA are emotionally attached to their money. So whether it be religious or cultural, it's about trust for them. You notice that we're talking about really like the thinking behind those people that don't actually do that. It's somewhat based on that. So that's what the barrier, what you want to talk that we're going into. Also informal channels. Many of them use informal channels again, because it's more convenient, and again, trust. It's what they know. There's also like a knowledge gap. So maybe, we say it's a complicated jargon or a lack of understanding. People find it hard to understand these services. So that's one thing we notice as well. If we are going to promote these and we are going to get these people going with this, that's something to keep in mind. And then of course, we've got technology infrastructure in a lot of these countries, not only in Bahrain, we're lucky with that sense, but the cost of acquiring technology and accessibility, if you want to talk about general financial inclusion. Identification documents in some parts of the world, not everyone has that, as we know, and that's a problem. That doesn't enable them to authorize to be able to utilize them. So now I'm talking about in general. But if we look at, according to the report, if you look at all of these things and what does actually having financial inclusion, what is the value? So this might answer some of the questions. Is it's about the whole why we're driving this is because it's about eliminating poverty, which goes with this SDG goals, which is I think eliminating poverty is SDG 1. Gender balance, that's another thing that it will help with. Fostering quality education and sustainable growth and innovation, and in general, reducing inequality. I mean, for us, I heard this mentioned again and again. One of the 3 there actually, and from the report and also our actual research in it, there are 3 key drivers, and everyone's here has mentioned it, is regulations, that drives financial inclusion, digitalization, fintech for unbanked, and financial literacy. From our findings, those are the key sort of drivers that would enable it, and that has come out the outcome of the report. And how do we do this? Basically, you need to, as some of our panelists have said, enabling access, making open accounts seamless, advanced eKYC, as you said, all these things that we talked about, encouraging, technology infrastructure, national initiatives like we have as well. Those, like you said, partnerships, if you want to put it that way. A quality, not only the range of fintech services, but the quality of fintech services. So that's another thing that, if it's not of use to them, then it's another thing. If it's complicated, it's not, not the sort of thing. And sort of as well, going with regulation, customer protection regulations, so that there's trust, so that when they have trust, and sort of looking at crowdfunding opportunities, when there's trust, then you have that then they will start to use it more. So I hope that answers your question, maybe a little more, but I saw some of the questions coming up about, what about working women in Bahrain and what's that got to do with us? If you look at it on the psychology part of it, that's half the battle, is the way people are thinking, and infrastructure, and sort of, when I say financial literacy, that's a big thing, because a lot of people are not aware of these things and how to use them and why it's important. Digitalization, like everyone has mentioned a few times here, and of course the regulations that we're very lucky to be forward in Bahrain, and so on.
Thank you so much, Suzy. I think you gave a lot of points in one question, and I think I picked that question on purpose. So you're right, it does kind of reduce the gender imbalance, sustainability, promotes innovation, inequality, reduces inequality, and also the 4 indicators that you've mentioned. I think the most important one for me is it's not just being able to have all of these solutions, but it's also knowing how to use them and what value that it brings to you as a person. And do I trust these products to actually take me to the next level of my business, or the next level of me understanding my finances? So access and usage do go hand in hand, and they are measured by that. And we can all relate to that. I mean, when I was younger, I didn't really know how to save so well, or invest, or do any of that. Or do I really understand what my bank account has, or the new features that are popping up? I'm just using them because I want to be everywhere. Yeah. Versus now, I'm trying to understand them. I'm trying to understand, does it really target what I need? And do I understand that what each feature is giving me for either my business or my personal life, or my hobbies that I do on the side besides work? So thank you so much. I think that was such a good answer. I'm going to go to Mahmood's last question. So banks, and you mentioned a little bit of this, Mahmood, in your first question. Banks and financial institutions are obviously key to boosting financial literacy and all of it as a whole. So there is an economic opportunity that's presented here. But is there an area where leaders within the financial services industry can have a powerful impact by making a genuine commitment to financial inclusion agenda? So I know some banks and institutions have created these agendas and have created these initiatives, but what can they do not only to promote, but to advance them to the next level, especially during this time? Where do you start? It's such a big topic, but where do banks actually have to start, especially the leaders?
Sure. It actually starts by realizing that we have to change, and we have to adapt, and we have to move fast. The world is moving at a very fast pace in this front, and if we want to stay at the forefront, we have to push for creativity and innovation, and we have to adapt and actually endorse those initiatives. Today, where we stand is that 90% of our services you can perform them digitally. And this is just the basic services that are currently being offered. But the way how things are moving in the future, there is more to it. We've mentioned about financial literacy and its importance. And by adopting new technologies and offering new services digitally, we can assist our clients in providing a personalized service, actually catering something for each and every person's needs. And in order for that to happen, obviously, there is the artificial intelligence world that we need to take things from. And we're currently developing our systems to be able to read this rich data that we have as a result of the inclusion and the digitization effort, and start developing programs, personalized programs in a digital matter that cater each and every person. You can see the significant shift in banking. It's no longer the client comes to the bank. It's the banks chasing the clients, going to the doors of the customers, hitting on their doors 24/7. The process is hectic, it's challenging, but with the right calibers that we have in Bahrain, with the right skilled workforce and the right training institutions on board, we are able to raise up to that bar and actually develop innovative solutions. I would really focus on the artificial intelligence bit going forward and the personalized service in a very efficient and effective way. There was one of the questions that hinted towards laborers being unbanked. Today, with the regulations and rules and the wage protection system that's coming up, employers are encouraged to open bank accounts for the laborers. And actually, you no longer need to maintain a minimum balance because the service with Zeerah is offered free of charge. And it's basically capitalizing on the benefits that it will provide to the client and being able to cross-sell the existing products to the customer. And by cross-sell from a bank perspective, but from the client perspective, he will be receiving different services with minimal effort, let's say. And the competition level in Bahrain is quite good. We've seen banks heading that direction, and this is healthy and this is good, and this provides the best customer experience and customer journey, and that's what our real target is here.
Thank you so much, Mahmood. I think you mentioned a word we didn't hear today was data and personalization. Yeah. Taking really all that rich data that banks have, and not just banks, all entities right now. And data is the new oil, as we've always said in the past few years, not just now. So catering to that and having personalized services that people can understand will definitely help in the financial inclusion journey or war.
Yeah.
Ahmed, the last question for you. Financial inclusion, you've mentioned it, and Benefit will be the best person to answer this, starts with payments. And because they serve as a gateway to other financial services such as savings, credit, and insurance. So to improve financial inclusion, these transaction accounts need to enable users to make the most out of them, if not all, of their payment needs. So how do you make sure that everyone has the capability to participate? You have all this stuff, you can make all these easy payments, but how do you ensure that they're going to be participating? How do you make sure that happens?
Actually, the answer was we provide, or we supply what the customer want at first place. So it's not we develop and then we supply and then we get feedback from the customer, because the journey starts from the end user themselves, going to the entity being served, and then come to us being the infrastructure provider. So all of those are critical points that we are considering in availing any of the services that we do. We aim that the service sell itself rather than we are selling it. Yani, one thing we learned from the journey of the introduction of Benefit Bay is word of mouth is the most powerful marketing tool for any of the service you introduce. And how you obtain such power is if you provide a service that makes a customer satisfied and he starts promoting it among each other. And we have started Benefit Bay back in 2017. We have seen the adaptation of people exchange, or the power of social interaction is more powerful of the million you spend on marketing campaigns and on all of that. And education is important, but you don't trust it as you trust the person next to you, your friend or your brother or your mother or your father, telling you to use this service because it is good. And how this is get driven, because we hear what people want, we hear what are the demand, we hear what are their pains in terms of payment processing and payment exchange and cash and the circulation of money in the market. And hence we are developing and providing such service to the public that are really easy to adapt and very convenient. Not only that, even from an institutional level, the introduction of EFTS in collaboration with Central Bank, the biggest supporter here, bank used to do batch processing. They used to receive any CDs or paperwork and they exchange. Now we have transformed all of this into just a click, and they can exchange and upload and do all the payments at a click. One of the examples that we are really proud of, I'm mentioning this because it's almost a year since we launched fuel payment, for example. So at the start of the pandemic, everyone was complaining. Yani, after the introduction of Benefit Pay, I only carried cash to do my fuel.
I need to thank you for that.
We all need to thank you for
Really,
that.
honestly, my life has become much easier, especially since they've moved the ATM off the place I take petrol from.
Yeah. Yeah. So we were planning to introduce this, but with the pandemic, and it forced us to speed up the introduction of such service. Because of people demand, and we have seen and analyzed what are the best user experience toward achieving that. I want to achieve, there is no person-to-person interaction. I don't want to touch anything or devices in the market, so I'm standing in my car, doing the fuel and drive off without any minimal interaction. Just wave with your hand and your phone with whatever you want to pay from. This is an example. Another thing is that we have seen the remittance parts of the services in Bahrain. We have seen a lot of cash being exchanged there, and we heard them out what are their pains toward accepting cash. So we come up with a very, I would say, cost-effective scheme for them to accept electronic payment, and we have availed Benefit Pay as a mean of payment at their branch. Going forward as well, inshallah, within the coming month or two, we are going to introduce sort of a marketplace for remittance providers. So we are targeting those WPS clients that are today will be banked, I would say, to have an option or have a marketplace to do what they are doing the most when they receive their salary, which is remittance. So we will avail this on top of Benefit Pay, which will avail more options and accessibility to remittance services that are regulated, that are safe, that are that, rather than those shops within the market that they are doing today using cash. And we will support also on online onboarding, and all of their services will be at a click. So payment is not about the payment itself; it's about the journey and the experience you give to the people, and the easiness you give the entities towards selling it to their client. And the payment gateway is one of the aspects. Implementing a payment gateway, each bank needs to invest millions of dollars toward implementing that. So we are availing a shared platform. I'm going back to the shared platform concept, where they can avail it to their corporate, they can avail it to their individuals, customer who are running businesses to accept payments online in a very easy and most convenient and secure way. Benefit Pay is also a shared platform. Today, imagine scattering a different wallet in the market where every participant in the market is eligible to participate in this platform and offer their services through that platform, maintaining their identity, their competitiveness, all of their services is still being maintained and saved within this platform. This is our perspective when it comes to payment and offering. Again, I'm going back to you should provide a service that sells itself. If you struggle in selling a service, I mean there is an issue in the service you are providing. I hope I addressed this question, Fatma.
No, thank you. You've answered my question, and I like that you said that it starts with the end user, and then you as infrastructure providers would actually cater to what the user wants. We've had it the other way around, and now this is the way that the process is. And obviously, it's not just about payments; it's about the journey and the experience of it. So I think you brought two beautiful points in that answer. And those are all the questions that I had for the panel discussion, but I'm glad that you guys also brought up a lot of points that are reflecting some of the answers to the questions that we have on the chat, and we've answered some of them. I'm just gonna really quickly go. First, I wanna just address, hold on one second. The first, it's not a question really, well, I think Rabia's question was already answered by Suzy. If anyone else wants to take a chunk out of it, there's a big percentage of expats living in Bahrain. How will they be included in the financial market, especially when they're not part of the job market, like housewives or laborers? And I think, Suzy, you brought a good point, the wage protection scheme. Does anyone else want to add to that question, or do you feel like, I think that was a good enough answer from Suzy's end?
I think, Fatma, just to add on to what Suzy mentioned, the wage protection system is actually a good and a great initiative, to be honest, toward including all those blue-collar workers, households, and all of that, and that sector. I don't believe we have a limitation from banks today to open an account for any eligible person or entity in the country. So, but this would be forcing at least the companies to open accounts for their employees. So there is no longer exchange of cash or check for salaries. They are forced to do it electronically, and we'll see this improve, inshallah, in the coming year as the adaptation grows based on the plan for the WPS implementation.
Thank you, Ahmed. We had a question from, well, I think Fahim, it's not more of a question, it's a little bit not related to the topic. You said, do you have a FinTech career transformation plan that assists experienced professionals to switch their career in FinTech? I think you can, we can connect you to Suzy maybe after that, so then you can find out more about the programs that the Bahrain FinTech Bay has. Let me go down to, hold on one second. Okay, there's one from, so Avinash, a question from Avinash. According to me, financial inclusion and financial security is not an end in itself, but a means to an end. So if a person has access to the banking sector, many financial institutions and fintech companies do not yet offer products with terms or features that cater to diverse needs of different customer segments or encourage micro savings in an automated manner by those with limited disposable income. Are there plans to address this? Now, I don't know who should tackle this question.
I can share a bit on this front.
Yeah.
Digitization is a journey that has started with many banks, and the infrastructure is out there, is ready, and it's about developing more products. The competition out there in the market pushes the major players to offer those specialized services. Historically, as an example, in order to open an account, for example, to trade in a certain security, you had to have a minimum balance and deal with a certain windows or certain institutions to qualify. But today, those have been broken down. There is no transacting fee. Things have been, the race is to capture as much clients as possible and to enhance the customer journey to win the clients over. The competition is playing its role right now. And if we look globally, more specialized services are being rendered, and I would understand that there's difficulty, especially with SMEs, to raise funds, simply because SMEs by nature, they operate in a high-risk environment, and as banks, they are socially responsible institutions. At the end of the day, they manage depositors' funds. However, having said that, with digitization, we'll be able to understand the behavior of the SME in a better way. We'll be able to ring-fence their revenues. We'll be able to enhance their financial literacy, and this by itself would help us in developing products that would cater. The other day, I had a meeting with private sector investors, and they are developing a platform to finance the receivables of SMEs. A very brilliant idea. It's a fantastic idea. It addresses a pain area for SMEs, and it avails the relevant liquidity with a secured way of financing to address and mitigate the risk. Banks are coping with the competition, and these services are being delivered.
Thank you, Mahmood. I think we'll go just for the last question from Abdul Aziz. Now, I think maybe, Mahmood, you need to answer that, or if anyone has a point, there are a bit specific questions within the banking industry. So if you know, I could send the questions later on if it's not going to be addressed today. So Abdul Aziz has asked, I think we need to look at financial inclusion from a global perspective. The modern person today is often moving and relocating. He wants banking services from back home, even when traveling. Is there such plan by Bahraini banks to offer such services?
Now, this is a very important service and feature. It requires a lot of collaboration from different governments, because you're dealing with cross-border, and by dealing cross-border, you have different banks in different jurisdictions, and we have to comply with the rules and regulations. But things are possible. Now, what we can do in Bahrain, for example, having the GCC nationals open bank accounts in Bahrain, this is something that was enabled and was proven and it's up and running. This is a start. This can be replicated probably going forward as the globe moves to more integration on those fronts, and as the rules and regulations globally allow for that, then this is definitely a service that is required for people.
Thank you. Hopefully we see that in the future.
Inshallah.
These are all the questions. I want to first of all thank all our speakers today. You guys really shared a lot of good insights, a lot of learning and valuable information that a lot of people can take away from the session today. If anyone else has any questions that they didn't get the chance to ask, you could always send us an email and we will direct it to the right party or the right speaker. And if you guys want to ask more questions in general about Bahrain FinTech Bay, Benefit, KFH Bahrain, or from the BIBF's perspective, please do feel free to send those. We're going to have our next session hopefully next month, and we'll let you know what the topic is. And I want to thank you for the attendees and participants that are with us today, that asked all the questions, that have been here for our first event with powered by KFH Bahrain. And I want to thank the bank for giving us an opportunity to host this awesome session and many more for the end of the year. So I want to thank you all, and
Thank you very much.
take care, and have a lovely weekend and Eid Mubarak in advance.
Inshallah, thank you.
Thank you all. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fatma. It's well managed, well moderated.
Very well,
Thank you very
well
much.
done.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye.
مع السلامة.